Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and to be specific, we are going to go to the state of Western Australia, and it's the first time I'm reviewing a beer from there in quite some time actually. Now, the brewery we're going to have a look at today is one that has never featured on the channel before. I've never tried anything from these guys. They seem to be a very highly rated operation, but still very, very small scale actually. And the beer that we're going to have a look at is one of their beers that's very highly rated, one of their kind of yearly releases from what I understand, and it is supposed to be very, very nice actually. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Spearwood, which is one of the kind of southwestern districts of Perth in Western Australia, on the Australian west coast. And we're going to have a look then at my first beer from Innate Brewers. So this particular beer is called Snow Leopard. It comes in at 9.8% ABV, and this is an Imperial Stout, the 2023 vintage one as well, I should add. Apparently this beer was first brewed back in 2019, and they've refined the recipe every year. And this is one that I found up here in Hong Kong. Never heard of the brewery, saw that they were Australian and thought, kind of, why not, let's have a go, because I don't get to review Australian beers all that often back in Europe. It's a nice opportunity that's opened up since I relocated to Hong Kong. But yeah, 9.8% Imperial Stout from Innate Brewers in Spearwood, Perth, Western Australia. Let's crack on and see what this beer has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Innate Brewers. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because the Australian beers are a bit more readily available here in Hong Kong than they were back in Europe, which is awesome. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really, really nice things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and tell you a wee bit about Innate Brewers for the first time. So, Innate Brewers, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the Spearwood area of Perth in Western Australia, WA, and the company was founded back in 2015. So the main people behind founding the company are Anthony Pillinger, Nathan Boyes, Kelly Lavin and Nigel Lutton. So Kelly had a background in business, Nigel and Nathan were in the IT and tech sector, while Anthony was involved in construction. But the four were kind of brought together by a love of home brewing, so they used to get together and brew different beers, and then they decided that they wanted to take this passion to the next level by developing a warehouse into a brewery in Spearwood and then selling their beers commercially. But to get the brewery off the ground, they enlisted the help of Joe Nash, who is from Fremantle, which is a very famous area of Perth that's known for its craft breweries. They call it Freo there, or Freo. I'm honestly not sure how to emphasise it, but yeah, Fremantle, correct me in the comment section below. But yeah, in Freo, he was a native of Freo, and he'd been involved in the founding of Matzo's up in Broome. And he then studied online with the Siebel Institute before working at Colonial Brewing Company in Margaret River in Western Australia. He also worked at Grage Roads, which is a Fremantle brewery, and then he also worked at Indian Ocean Brewing in Minderey, which is also Western Australia as well. And after this, he joined Innate as their head brewer, and the four founders maintained their day jobs while he got on with brewing the beer and developing a lot of the recipes. But the brewery apparently started off with a 1,000 litre brew kit that they called a franking kit, just because of how it was kind of pieced together. They took different pieces and apparently it was a very interesting setup to operate, but over the years they've continued to build up the brewery infrastructure and develop new recipes, and they've garnered a number of awards despite only producing around 50,000 litres of beer per year until very, very recently. In 2019 they started canning their beers, and then in 2022 Matt Crockett came in to the company as the new head brewer, having previously worked for Wayward Brewing Company in Sydney and also for Little Creatures in Perth. And many of you might recognise that name, Little Creatures. These guys were the kind of pioneers of the Australian craft beer movement. They are quite a big brewery these days, brewing on a huge scale, and they've got operations all across the world. But you know, Little Creatures was one of the first brewers in Australia to really kind of get the IPAs and pale ales and stuff like that out there a little bit more. But as of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced about 120 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said, they're very highly decorated, but they are still a very small operation. So to find one of their beers up here in Hong Kong is a little bit special actually. So definitely cool to be able to feature this brewery for you here on the channel. And I do hope that I can get down to Perth at some point and explore some of the different craft breweries and things there. That would be really, really cool actually. So yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Innate Brewers for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And if you do want to learn more about the Australian beer scene, do check out my friend Sam Smalley, who now has his channel Short and Stout Beer Reviews, and he's covering the Aussie beer scene very, very well. He's been a follower of my channel for quite a number of years actually. Lovely guy, and I do hope I can meet up with him at some stage and do some out and about videos in Australia. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and have a taste of it, and as I say, go and learn more about the brewery if you're interested. So yeah, I honestly can't remember how much I paid for this can, but I bought this one at Out of the Brew over in Central on Hong Kong Island. 440ml can, this one. As we said, Snow Leopard, 9.8% Imperial Stout. Black top in the can there. Tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here, but I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. The beer apparently is named after like a children's fable. But yeah, it says on the side here, Trouble has been brewing for over 20 years. Once a tale of folklore, the Snow Leopard was thought to have been a bedtime fable whispered by mothers to their children on the coldest of Russian nights. A journey of two divergent heroes collaborating for the greater good, wandering sage and a brazen trailblazer venturing through destinations unknown, never to return to the motherland, they set course for a secret rendezvous with the Snow Leopard herself to exchange a secret formula containing the dark blend of Chinook hops, roasted barley and chocolate malt. For what purpose, you may ask? All will be revealed upon examination. Peel back the curtain. The Snow Leopard is reporting for duty. Welcome to a different kind of Cold War. So yeah, quite interesting. I do like the artwork on this one there. You can see the woman in the... So there, although I think the light is reflecting off that a little bit. But yeah, this apparently was originally brewed as a collaboration with Monk Craft Beer Kitchen, who are based in Fremantle in Western Australia as well. They are unfortunately now bust, but the original head brewer Joel Nash was friends with and kind of mentored by the guy who was the brewer up there, the head brewer. So that's the main reason for this collaboration. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we got on. The Snow Leopard Imperial Stout from Innate Brewers in Spearwood, just in Perth, Western Australia. So yeah, is this my first Aussie Imperial Stout? For a few years, it could well be. But yeah, this is one that I'm very curious about. I'm really interested to see if we're going to get like an old school RIS out of this, or exactly what we're going to get. There we are. So I think we've got about 80% of the beer out into the glass at the moment. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. The can wasn't too hard, incidentally. This one does actually just have quite an impressive head to it. So yeah, you can see that the beer is poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say quite dark, chocolatey tan head on this one. You can see there's smaller bubbles and medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid, and the head certainly gets a little bit foamier and more bumpy the further up that you go. But as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, it's poured this lovely, dark, ebony, rosewood colour. If we shine the light through this one, you can see that it does have a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola edge to it, but this beer, I wonder if this has got a bit of wheat and oat in it, because it actually comes across as being very, very opaque. Now remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But when it comes to Imperial Stouts, it's very, very difficult to affect the colour of these beers by adding adjuncts. And I've only seen this done once, and that was by Puhasta in Estonia, when they put beets in the beer and it had this kind of purple thing to it. But yeah, this looks like a proper old school RIS. One or two little bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, and there are a few little sediment particles at the bottom of the glass there. But overall, this beer looks pretty much as you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this one. As I say, I'm just very curious to see exactly what type of Imperial Stout we've got here. I'm wondering if it's going to be more of an old school RIS or a little bit more of a kind of sweet milk stout or something like that. We'll just need to see. But nothing surprising about the appearance of this one. I think we can move on and do the aroma section of this video then. So let's do this. Oh yeah, old school RIS. Definitely old school RIS, this one. And I'm not going to complain about that at all. Definitely not. So, yeah, for me, this beer smells lovely. I think I'm going to enjoy this one. I really am going to enjoy this. Yeah, so this is your proper roasty toasty, but still quite sweet, old school RIS. Now when it comes to the Imperial Stout style, there's a few things you can do with these. You can do like a double mash, for example, and that'll thicken up your mouthfeel and give you a big, you know, really kind of sticky type character to the beer, and that'll complex, how do we say, that'll increase the complexity of your flavours in the beer. But the other thing you can do is do a longer wort boil, and that'll give you a more leathery kind of character, and it'll focus on the kind of brown sugary notes. This beer smells as if it's got a little bit of both going on, so I wouldn't be surprised if this one has a slightly longer wort boil and has a double mash. But at 9.8% ABV, it's certainly not the heaviest of Imperial Stouts you're going to come across these days. And again, the aroma, there's just something about the aroma in this one that strikes me as being a little bit more kind of old school, if you like, but it smells beautiful. Let's just kind of break this beer down then and describe that aroma for you a wee bit more in depth. Yeah, I mean, the backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely kind of old school, roasty toasty, well-fired bread crust backbone to it. You certainly have also like a little bit of, there's a little touch of nuttiness in this one for sure, a little bit of woodiness as well. But yeah, quite a bit of sort of German rye bready character, that big oily German rye bready note. Some sweet kind of more wholemeal brown bready character as well. And then yeah, you've also got a lot of other things going on in this one. This beer, it actually reminds me of the Herr Fredriksson from Amager Brewhus in Copenhagen in Denmark, which is one of the classic Danish Imperial Stouts. It really reminds me of that. This is proper old school, this one. So yeah, this is going to be awesome. Very, very happy with this. Really can't remember what I paid for it, but at this point I don't care. Don't give a shit. Yeah, so above the kind of brown bread, you start to get the chocolatey notes out of this one. And for me, the chocolatey character in this beer is quite interesting because it has that sort of high cocoa chocolate, you know, sort of 80% type note to it. So yeah, nice 80% cocoa chocolate. I would say you also have a little bit of 80% cocoa chocolate. You also have a nice little bit of kind of milkier chocolate in there as well. So yeah, 40-50% cocoa chocolate and some 70-80% cocoa chocolate, but there is quite a little bit of that brown sugary character coming out of this one, and the brown sugars are making me think this beer has had a slightly longer wort boil to it. It gives you a wee bit of a sort of dry cocoa nibby character as well, for sure. So yeah, some nice sort of leathery brown sugars in there, a bit of treacle and molasses, toasty caramel. Yeah, as I say, aroma wise, this is a very, very old school RIS, this one, and I've been missing beers like this in all honesty, so quite happy with this one. I don't know if there's too much else that we need to say about the aroma of the malty side of this beer, to be honest with you. It's got a little bit of chocolate brownie, a little bit of chocolate cake to it, as I said, but I think we've covered all the base aspects. Now obviously with this beer being 9.8% ABV, you could age this in the can for a year or two if you really wanted. With Imperial Stouts, the hoppy character will drop out of the character. The hoppy character will drop out of the beer the longer that you age it, and it will smoothen up. But at 9.8% ABV, you know, you have to balance that quite finely. If you're above, you know, if you're sort of 10, 11, 12, we're very close to 10, if you're 11, 12% ABV, you don't have to care about it so much. But still, yeah, the way everything goes together in this one is quite nice. But certainly you're still getting a wee bit of hoppy character out of this one. There's a wee bit of earthiness in there, and that blends well. You get a wee bit of an almost like tobacco-y note out of this beer as well. When I was studying chemistry, we actually experimented with tobacco quite a bit and measured the smoke and stuff off it. So yeah, quite familiar with the aroma. I love the smell of tobacco, but hate the stuff. So it has a wee bit of a tobacco-y note to it, this one. But yeah, a little bit of earthy character from the hops, wee bit of herbal note, some kind of spicy floral aromaticity too, and a wee bit of grassiness. But yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer, I think, is really, really quite nice. So yeah, the hoppy character is still present in this one, but obviously if you let this beer sit a wee bit more, you're not going to have to care that much. You know, you're not going to get as much hoppy character out of it. The fruity side of things is kind of what you would expect from the style as well. You do get a little bit, there's a wee bit of a raisiny note to it, certainly some plum, oily figs, yeah, a bit of raisin, underneath that some juicy plum. You do get a little bit of that more dry fruity character out of it too, like a kind of sultana, datey type note. But as I say, certainly some figs, some black currant, some blackberries, and yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. I get more and more of the sharp kind of notes out of it as well, the more that I smell of it. But it's a beautiful smelling beer, that properly old school RIS. I think I'm going to enjoy this quite a lot. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. But I think it's about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. I'm filming this one for you on Sunday morning. This is going to be my breakfast stout basically today. I was in the mood for this beer today, so yeah, glad that I can finally try this one. So yeah, this is the Snow Leopard 9.8% Imperial Stout from Innate Brewing Company in Spearwood, Perth, Western Australia. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is good. Now, one thing I will say about this beer, as I suspected it would be, it's properly old school. This is a big roasty toasty bastard of an Imperial Stout. So This is a beer that more kind of old school craft drinkers are going to enjoy. A lot of newer craft beer drinkers who've come in during the haze craze, the smoothie sours, the pastry stout kind of era, maybe they'll struggle to deal with this one a little bit, because this has got to be 80, 90 IBUs, something like that. It's a way up there. This is like how Imperial stouts were back in the day when I was getting into beer in 2010 sort of time. But I'm going to say straight away to Innate Brewing, thumbs up to these guys. This is an awesome example of an Imperial stout. Apparently their double IPA is very good. I would love to have a go at that, and they've got a red IPA as well. You don't see many of those about. I would love to have a go at that, but just from having a sip of this Imperial stout, you can kind of tell how good quality this brewery are going to be. It reminds me actually of quite a few of the Imperial stouts I had from Finland in recent times. But this is awesome. So let's do as we always do. We'll break the beer down, we'll describe it a bit more in depth for you, and we'll just enjoy ourselves while we do it. So yeah. But yeah, this is proper old school. It kind of reminds me of Ballast Point's Victory at Sea, or like Old Rasputin from that was North Coast. What was the other big Imperial stout? It wasn't Bigfoot. What was I forget what Sierra Nevada's Imperial stout was. Narwhal. That's it. Narwhal. Kind of reminds me of, it's sort of this type of Imperial stout you're getting for this one. So yeah. And of course in Europe, Herr Fredriksson from Amar is the big one. But yeah, let's break the flavour of this beer down. Middle third of your palate. The backbone of the beer is that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty character in this one. And it is, I think it's just black malt that's in this, because it has that real dry harshness to it actually. It's not like the slightly smoother Special B that is quite often used in Europe. So yeah, really roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a wee touch of like woodiness in there, but not a lot. Maybe a little bit of nuttiness above that. But then yeah, it's a more dense, rye bready character, which is really nice too. Yeah, you've got that more rye bready character coming out of this one. That rye bready note's actually really nice too. So yeah, roasty, toasty, harsh, well-fired bread crust in there, then a more dense and sweet rye bready note. And then above that, there's above that, there's a wee bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character. And I think within the kind of rye bready layer and the wholemeal bready layer, you get a little bit more of the nuttiness coming out of the beer, and it almost feels as if above that you've got like a little bit of like a muffin or chocolate brownie type layer in there, just something a little touch more cakey, and that's interesting too. Yeah, and that layer has a wee bit of like, again, it has a wee bit of that nutty kind of note to it, but then above all of that you're getting the chocolate layers. You can tell with this Imperial Stout, I'm pretty sure, just from the way the mouthfeel is, that I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of this is barley malt. I don't think there could be a little bit of wheat, but I'm pretty sure there's not oat in this one. More modern stouts, of course, are using oat and wheat quite readily, but this one just feels a bit more, its mouthfeel is just a little bit drier, which to me usually, it just doesn't quite have the thickness of a stout that uses uses a bit of wheat and a bit of oat to it. But yeah, above that kind of chocolate brownie muffiny type layer, you can feel the chocolate. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel it's like 90% cocoa chocolate, and as you move further forward, it kind of just smoothens its way out a little bit. As often say, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, whereas sweeter ones come out further forward. So yeah, at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got a wee bit more of a at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got more of an 80-90% cocoa chocolate type note. Then as you move further forward, there's a little bit of there's a little bit more of I would say you get more about it's about 60% cocoa chocolate as you reach the middle of that middle third, and then maybe about 50% as you go further forward. The chocolatey character in this one is quite charred and quite harsh in a sense, but then above all of that, and it has a bit of that silky character too, but then as you move above that, you get a wee bit of the kind of treacle molasses brown sugar out of this one. But this one, the brown sugar really takes a backseat to the roastiness of this beer, I would say. But when you take the beer in, you can feel that little circle in the middle of your palate there. And that's where the brown sugary notes are. So you can feel there's a sort of leathery brown sugar underneath. There's a bit of a treacle molasses type note on there's maybe a bit of sweet caramel, in there. And then the dead centre of your palate is that more kind of treacle molasses sort of thing. And that is obviously the epicenter of the booziness of the beer. But all of that sits in the middle third of your palate. And that's where the vast majority of the complexity of the flavour of this beer is coming from. So yeah, this beer is really interesting in that particular regard. Proper old school, big and bitter Russian Imperial Stout. This one, it's definitely right to call this an RIS rather than anything else. But yeah, that's the middle third of the palate covered. So yeah, let's go to the back third of your palate. And as I often say, the back third of your palate is going to give you similar flavours, just at different intensities. And generally speaking, sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, then you get the rye bread in the base, you get the more kind of light, airy brown bread sitting on top of that. Then the base of that back third of your palate has the base of that back third of your palate, you've got a bit more of the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in the base, which is even drier. Then you've got the kind of rye bready layer there, which was a little bit lighter and more airy. The wholemeal brown bready character above that, which again is lighter and more airy. And then you've got a wee bit of that kind of chocolate muffiny type note. And then the kind of toasty, charred aspects of the chocolate just creeping over the top of the malty side of that back third of your palate. And then you've got the yeasty side of the beer coming out there as well. So let's look at those yeasty notes actually. So the yeasty side of the beer for me, you've got this really dense, what's the word I'm looking for? You've got this really dense, brown sugary, chocolate cakey note in there. And as you go around it, it's got a little bit more of a kind of rye bready, it's got a little bit more of a kind of rye bready sort of kind of edge to it, more grainy rye bread. Then the edge is again that sort of charred, well-fired bread crusty character there. So all of that sits on top of everything else that's going on in the back third of your palate. So definitely you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So the way all of that pieces together is quite interesting for sure. On the hoppy side of things then, this beer does actually still have quite a little bit of hoppy presence to it, and they're using Chinook in this one. We know Chinook is a 14% alpha American hop, big piney resinous character, and that's certainly quite obvious in this beer. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness there. And as you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral, aromatic, and a wee bit spicy. But yeah, round the front curve of your tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more sort of grassy, I would say. You've got a wee bit of a kind of grassy, zesty spiciness coming out of this beer. So that's quite interesting, definitely. Yeah, so for me, the way the green component comes out in this one actually complements the roasty, toasty bitterness of the beer quite well. This might have been a stout that would have benefited a bit from a wee bit more aging, to be honest with you, because it's quite harsh and quite bitter at the moment. But still, for me, it's a nice change of pace from the big sweet, smooth things that you're often getting on the market these days. So that's worth bearing in mind. So yeah, you get that piney resinous note, the kind of floral spice and things from the Chinook coming out in this beer in abundance. But let's look at that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got the rye bread in the base and the brown bread on top, of course. The base of that front third of your palate is the toasty, well-fired bread crust. The rye bread's in there, the smooth wholemeal brown bread's on top of that, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer too. So let's look at that. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, for me, is the fruity side of this beer for me, you have this, you do get a little bit of that very sharp raisiny note on the top, definitely some nice plums underneath that. I'm not getting quite as much of the kind of dates and prunes and stuff like that I was getting in the aroma of the beer. So yeah, raisins, plums, and as you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a little bit of a more kind of juicy figgy note to this one. Yeah, juicy fig, maybe a little bit of a kind of cherry-ish note as well. But then yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, this beer is more about it's more about the kind of black curranty and blackberry sort of flavours, like quite juicy and quite oily in a sense. So yeah, this is really interesting, this beer. As I say, it's proper old school style, this one, and that's a nice change of pace compared to a number of other things that are on the market these days. So I'm quite happy with it, I will say that. I'm quite happy with this one. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the tasting section. We've covered everything we need to with regard to the flavour. So yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things then, let's have a little look at that just to round off. So yeah, for me, mouthfeel wise, I would say that this beer is kind of bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth. This beer has a little bit of an oily, silky sort of vibe to it. So yeah, sort of oily, silky vibe kind of going on. And then you have, in terms of IBU, this is quite a high IBU beer. It's, it's got to be 90 or 100 IBUs. Some of that's coming from the malty side of things, some of it's coming from the hoppy side of things too. We've got Chinook and black malt in there. Go figure, it's a combination that's going to give you bitterness. Old school RIS for sure. But the malt base has roasty toastiness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a bit of a kind of more leathery sweetness on top. But as I say, it's certainly not the sweetest of even old school RIS Imperial Stouts. It's not the sweetest of, it's quite far away from the more modern sweet Imperial Stouts that are out there now. The hoppy side of the beer, as we said, earthiness, big piney resin, spicy floralness, those are the notes there. And the fruity character in this one is kind of old school red fruity, like cherry, plum, raisin, stuff like that. But all in all, lovely, lovely beer. This one's certainly a nice change of pace, and it does make me quite curious about some of the other Innate Brewing beers. So hopefully we can get a few more of their beers on the channel at some point in the future. I would certainly be very curious to try those. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one, and hopefully we can review a few more from these guys in the future. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Innate Brewers as well. But this one was the 2023 edition of the Snow Leopard, a 9.8% Imperial Stout. Certainly a proper old school Russian roasty toasty bitter bastard of a beer. And I think it was very, very nice. So yeah, let's see if we can get more from these guys in the future. But yeah, check out my social media, check out Innate's social media, try some of their beers, and I will catch you guys again very, very shortly. Until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and ciao just now.